Everyone. The first moments of setting up this live. This is our third live in this series where we are introducing our Mastering Connection course for men. And I am adding Mark to our video, who is going to be here with me once again as we discuss the connection in the context of men. And hello, Mark. And particularly
Hello.
our subject, our theme for today, I'm really looking forward to discuss with you is what women wish men to know about conflict and intimacy. And I would say that this is maybe the reason today we are going to talk about the main reason why we came up with this idea of doing a Mastering Connection course just for men. And so we are responding to what we've heard, the women in our personal lives, in our professional clinics, and in our courses to say, gosh, I wish the men in my life did this course. They need. And why is that? Why is that? What is that we create, and what is that men get from developing their connection that responds to something that women are saying men need to know?
It's a big question. It's and I think about it as a I can go quite fundamental quite quickly with the things that people have said, but it's the idea that the idea that disagreement is it could be perceived as this potential rupture, but actually what repeatedly is said to me is it's actually an opportunity for deeper connection.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the idea that conflict can be a conduit to a sort of a deeper connection, and this goes back to a little bit the notion of marble jar theory of last week. Where we share something vulnerable, and that's then witnessed and contained and mirrored back and held in some way, to add marble jars of security to that particular relationship. And so that the idea of women tend to have said to me that it's not a sort of a character assassination. I'm not making complaint to create character assassination. What I'm doing is looking to create deeper connection.
Yeah, so basically, women wish men know that when we go into conflict, we are not destructive. We are trying to get closer to you. Will that be something that we
I,
hear?
I think that's certainly what I've heard, but that's also what the clinical data suggests. This is not just what I think. This is something that crops up so regularly, that it's predictable, but it's also predictable from the data that's out there. But yeah, absolutely. And so there's a little bit of a difference in how we experience conflict. And I think the notion of that I'm going to switch to sort of what men think sometimes, and this is again not necessarily my thought around this. This is what people have said, and honestly, what I've experienced myself is this sort of sensation of being picked or sort of poked at. My characters being poked at in terms of my eligibility for being in said relationship, and so I if there's this thought that I think that this is an impact on my character or my worthiness as a man, then of course there's going to be a defensiveness or a behavior that goes with that isn't necessarily um, it, a reasonable response to the underpinning drive of the conflict in the first instance. So there's a bit of a mismatch. There's a bit of a mismatch.
And I'm because we're going to be here for a few moments. We're going to be discussing. We have a thread. We thought of bringing this subject of what women wish men to know, because often I see from the men I know, we are generalizing into a group of men and group of women, and we discussed this in our previous lives here, is why are we doing this? Why are we generalizing? And we are, one hand, we know there is a diversity, there is so many different backgrounds, and we could not put different people in such clear groups. But also we are very aware that we live in a society that same factors will affect people differently depending on how, if they are born with a vagina or not, or if they are born with a penis or not. So that is the aim of this, is because uh, and we hope that you stay with us until the end, because we want to bring a little bit a deeper understanding of what is that we are not telling each other. And I am more likely to say certain things to other women or to expect them to know than to the men in life. And there is a reason for that. And so we are openly owning the fact that we are taking this influence and this gender division between men and women. And I think you've spoken to it, is because there is something in women's experience that we may have a different attitude towards being in conflict. And it doesn't mean that we are better at it. It doesn't mean that we don't suffer the impact of being in an argument. It's just that there is, for those who go into an argument and go into a confrontation that can feel like destructive, women often come with this attitude: I need to be in expression, I need to be in communication with you, even if that means that I will have to confront and I will have to get into an argument. And often what I hear from my male clients is that they get tired of being pulled into these arguments because they want it to stop. So what men often tend to do in a confrontation, or in a position, a situation where the women are complaining, is they try to solve, they try to bring solutions. And because that's, again, I mean, I'm very solution based and I'm a woman, but patterns tell men, you need to take care of this, you need to get to under control, and and so you need to perform, and you need to help, and you need to provide. So there's different influences. But where we're going with this conversation is also because often we hear our men saying, I don't have any idea what's going in her mind. I cannot. Why is now she complaining about this? And then we have the women who come to our courses, or our clients, who say, please, they should attend courses when they learn to communicate, because I need to hear, I need to know what's going on in their minds. I wish that they were just more in touch with their emotions. And so there is wish for the other to do something or to be something, as a hope that their relationship is going to be better, as a that their conversations are going to be richer and not so triggering and not so. So we have decided that, yes, it's a different way. There is different needs out there, and men doing a course that helps them to develop the capacity to be more themselves and more with others, which also includes developing communication skills apart from developing the skills to be in touch with themselves, is very needed. Because again, as we discussed in the previous lives, women have been doing this work for one reason or the other for a longer time. It has been more well accepted women to do this work. So today we're going to cover what we hear women saying, and those with us and send us some messages and highlight what I really wish men knew when it comes to conflict, when it comes to intimacy, but actually when it comes to relationships. We're going to cover what is the general narratives that we are seeing out there. And not just in the last few months, but also in all the years. I still remember the first books that I read about relationships and how these books separated men and women. And 20 years later, I think I can say that some of it was valid and a lot of it was totally BS, right? So we are going to cover that because I think that some of these conversations are actually more damage than beneficial for us to be in balanced relationships with each other and to feel more connected. And finally, we're going to discuss what is really this difference about and what is that we wish that everybody knew and updated about themselves and about relationships, both women and both men. So, and this is the thing is, let's go back to those moments where we had women tell us, "Oh, I wish my partner knew this." Yeah, you only knew this. Can you bring some examples of what your clients may have said when they were talking about their male partners?
Well, I think the common thing is it goes back to the fundamental element is it comes back to I I I don't want to have a conflict to drive home a complaint. I just want to be witnessed and my distress validated in some way. Because in that interaction, rather than it being a solution, but a validation, there's security. I'm with you in your distress. I don't need to do anything. And actually that yes, maybe I'm, as the man, maybe the source of some of that, but it's not necessarily my job to try and fix it in this moment. And it's that sentiment which is so fundamental is I'm bringing this thing not because I want to destruct, but because I want to be heard.
Mm, okay, exactly. Yeah, so I think your client there or your client there were very, very aware already of themselves,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. It's so lovely to see some of your names. I send you hearts and smiles as well. Um, yeah, so the other thing as well that I find is that when I ask, so what would you like your partner to know or the man in your life to know? Actually, women very often don't know, right? Oh, I
Oh
just
sure.
do, and then there is a void. Oh, why? And then it becomes
Yeah.
complaint how they are. No, I'm not saying. I mean, most people I come across, we are privileged. We see each other in a way with kindness and with, particularly in the relationships that we are building, maybe not so much about our exes, but there is an understanding that people are as they are, they behave as they behave because there's something that made them that way, right? But there is also a big lack of understanding. What would I like my partner to know when it comes to conflict? What would I like my partner to know when it comes to intimacy? And yet, if we stay with those questions, often the word that comes to mind is pause, is to take it easy, is to be present, is, like is to take your time, to help, to be supportive, to say that okay, conflict is not about destruction, but intimacy is not just in one direction. There's so many things intercalated, and so I think that's what we're going to discuss. But yet we know this, and you and I have been working in this field for over 2 decades, and I'm not surprised, but I'm sad and angry somehow that the narratives being exacerbated and even being promoted by these media that we have access to are becoming even more polarizing in terms of what women want and are women and how they function and how men should be in order to be real men. And I don't even want to tell the names. I'm definitely not going to name names because this algorithm is going to increase their exposure. And I really think that these narratives shouldn't be given so too much voice, and yet they are out there. Just adults are accessing to these polarizing narratives, but also teenagers, and it's becoming a problem because a narrative that can be so destructive, as saying that women have less rights than men, men who are not behaving in a way are not actually real men. These narratives have a big impact, particularly because we don't have the structures to discuss them, to educate people, to clarify people against them. And so, what's the point of knowing more about it when, besides creating a general outrage or even supporting, because a message that is bombarded through the media so often in the end becomes familiar, our brain gives meaning, and some people who actually don't understand don't have the opportunity to know what women are, what men's needs are, they may more easily resonate with.
Yeah.
And the issue is that these narratives are quite wrong. And is because they are scientifically lies. They are saying lies to people over there, and I'd like to clarify some of these lies that we see in these narratives. You were going to say something.
Yeah, no, I think that's such an important point. Is the idea that it's the idea that there's populations out there who are speaking with certainty, and it's rather compelling when people speak with certainty. If you're unsure or not quite, not quite where you feel you should be in the world, and maybe you're struggling for connection, you have a strong voice. Being bombarded on the old social media, then we do get this very defined polarity, which is which is to a large degree just incorrect, because there's too broad a spectrum of human wants and needs and variation that we could be certain about anything. We can't be 100% about anything in these sorts of situations. But also the narratives aren't just unhelpful, but we'll be speaking next week about this a little bit more, about how a lot of these narratives are actively destructive. And so I think digging into some of them is really important. And I think the narratives themselves are so important to name, because they are almost in direct opposition to the growth and development of caring, loving human connection. And actually but I 100% agree that, like, speaking the names of the people is not the way. But let's have a think about some of the narratives that are held. Do you want me to jump in?
I was just remembering a conversation we had some time ago where, well, actually, I think that there is a likelihood that some of what's happening around human connection, we're going backwards, and I remember years ago realizing, when I start to get to know how was the culture in the 20s and the 30s in Europe, and I start accessing some of the writers and artists of that time and their lifestyle, and I realized that in 2000 we were really conservative in comparison. And I think we are actually getting retrograde in when it comes to relationships than we had, at least in the 80s, 70s, in my lifetime already. So yeah, we just assuming that just because we have more information doesn't mean that we are actually benefiting and progressing in how humans could relate. And there's many reasons why that happens. But last week we spoke about how the system benefits from this disconnection, and today we're going to talk about what is out there saying, what are these people, the manosphere, saying about the what women want. So first of all, I want to make it very clear, I think the term should be totally debunked. We should just call it completely lying, oppressive systems uh, of disconnection. Because for me, a biosphere is an environment where people are nurtured, and in these environments where people go and discuss these things and they all agree with this is definitely not nurturing. But one of the things is because one of the first judgments that come from this narrative is that men are natural dominant, and it does speak to things that people may resonate with, an aspect of the provider, the person who builds, the person who protects. And we all have different interpretations of what this could be, and historically, religiously, culturally, we may want actually to associate with this role of the male in the community to protect, to provide, to have to know how to do things, the do. And but the problem is that this narrative says, okay, men are men the more they dominate, and women are more women if they let themselves be dominated. One of the things that finds really not resonating with, particularly when women find themselves in their lives having to make so much decisions and wanting to be sovereign in the things that they are deciding for their lives. I see the difference of a woman who is free to make decisions, and that woman is actually more likely to be in connection with men than not. So, but I'm just going to another thing that says, and then I would like to hear from you um, anything that you could add, but just to give a list of things. Other things that it's said that women are emotional and chaotic, which means that they say that women need to be with someone who is in control, who is stoic, who doesn't show emotion, and so they need to be balanced. Again, okay, so what's the definition of chaos? What is the emotions? What is the thing that some beings of the human species are more emotional than others? Okay, we need to understand that that is not the case, and we'll discuss why. Then also they speak about, very often they say that there is an epidemic of love. Men are becoming single, they are not getting into relationships, and it's all women's fault because are deciding not to be with men. So, okay, wait a second. Again, so women don't want men? Is that what we are concluding? Is that something that we could say? Yes, of course, if we were to generalize, but we need to talk about what men, what's the role of men here. And then of course another thing is that very clear, they normally they define, well, women are not that into sex, women are much less likely to want sex per se. They give intimacy as at an exchange of men being able to perform and to be productive. So intimacy, men get sex as a transactional payment of how they can be. And so according to this, the more domineering, the more controlled, less emotional, the more stoic, the less chaotic, then the more sex you should be having in your life. And so again, these are the main points of these narratives. And we have studied, we know that this is not at all true from a neurobiological, from psychological, evolutionary, this is wrong. Then we have to look into this in terms of equity and the human rights perspective. What we saying here, actually, from the perspective? So are we saying that there are some humans who have more right to certain things than others? Then we need to understand of what is this emotions and expressions of emotion. And then, of course, finally, what's the sustainability of this completely power dynamic in creating relationships that are nurturing?
So I think kind of I want to sort of loop back a little bit to the to one of the starting points. This notion of, oh, what we want is this sort of hierarchy of power. We want this. I want a hypergamous relationship where, you know, my as a female, my male is going to be um, the sort of the dominant, and I'm going to be in a particular manner submissive, in that power dynamic. I you know, we can jump to the clinical data around this, and we know that in very large studies, the modern preference in around sort of 60 to 70 percentile is for a far more sort of egalitarian relational structure where actually what people are looking for, what women are looking for, and what men are looking for, it's much more to do with sort of matching interests and values and intelligence and these sorts of sort of educational sort of bands, and these are way better predictors of you know, successful relationships, and much better predictors of interest, to some sort of hierarchy which seems to be sort of based on, you know, how much muscle mass sort of a man has in relation to a woman. You know, we can't deny that there are sort of physical power imbalances, but I think increasingly in modern culture that's not, you know, the big burly, you know, human isn't necessarily the thing that is sort of the thing that is going to create psychological safety, and to consider that that's, oh yeah, as the man, this is your role to be this alpha, whatever that even means, type. It is well, it's not substantiated in the literature, and it also doesn't you know, in my experience of the world, doesn't really play out. You know, not with relationships that I've had with women, and certainly doesn't play out in relationships that I have with my male groups, of friends. So even my experience of this in the world makes me feel like this doesn't make any sense, and that actually you know, I'm not as a man, I don't look towards an alpha in the room, or I don't have people look towards me or demand that I have people look towards me for leadership. We don't seem to function like that. We function, we seem to function far more regularly as collective, and you know, healthily, you know, but we don't tend towards wanting to be tyrannized. Just doesn't make any sense. And so to suggest that this power dynamic is like the thing that people want is very odd to me. And it does have a massive impact on the I would say the neurobiology of both parties involved. You know, the idea that somebody is going to be coming in and in this state of dominance and strength and these sorts of things at all times, and it's untouchable. That's an unsustainable state. That you know, that I would say that what we're seeing there is people in you know, in dress more than necessarily anything else. I would say that the you know the oftentimes the thing that looks like stoicism, the you know, the calmness in face of storm, is actually totally overwhelmed by is actually a sensation of total overwhelm, and a degree of shutdown in the respect in the face of feeling challenged. You know, the idea of it's the idea of being flooded is often termed a more male experience. If I'm being bombarded with critique, well, my sense of value may be put on the line in these sorts of situations, and the shutdown response is the going silent. You know, and if that's something that's being encouraged, that's what a strong person does. I'm not even going to sort of satisfy you with answering. It's actually a dress up of overwhelm in lots and lots of circumstances. So yeah, I think that basic notion of power dynamic is not something that we see people on in the very, and I'm going to say in the large majority particularly want, because what we can also say is that some people might be looking for exactly that. We can't talk in absolute certainties, because there's a very wide scope of human experience, but by and large we can say that a more egalitarian balance in relationship is what people are looking for.
And again, and I just posted something on this, is that okay? So I'm criticizing that we shouldn't be telling women what they want. Women should find out and do something about discovering and being connecting with themselves, so they find what they want, and then they find a voice to express, and then they find the relationships where they can be heard to express their wants.
Yeah.
And telling that a woman wanting to be option. No, absolutely not. What we in fact, depending on our context, the truth is we will develop different relationships depending on what we need at a certain time. So the point that you made, that I want to continue on, is, but asking someone to be always wanting something, even the fact, oh, I want this in conflict, I want this in intimacy, just stating as a fixed idea is already a flaw, because we are ever adapting, ever evolving. If we are healthy, we are growing and challenging ourselves to experience the world in different ways. And so giving a label of I am like this, or I for the rest of my life, is unlikely going to create the to fully express myself. Also, as you were touching on, the fact we are demanding men to be so stoic and controlled all the time, already there is a tendency for that, if they never had the opportunity to do it,
Mm.
is that we are denying men the opportunity to be vulnerable. So we are actually building relationships based on people who not only have to be fixed to certain roles in that relationship, but also how are they going to express the parts of them that don't fit into the pattern. So that's where I want to make the link, is that what women wish men to know during conflict and intimacy, because most of the things that these days are so important, is that I speak to my clients and my friends, is that it's the arguments they have with their partners, and it's their intimacy they have with their partners.
Mm.
And so what is that we need to know? You've already mentioned something around, in fact, what can help us to be together in conflict. And so even if our women cannot express, essentially we're already tapped into that. What could help? What helps navigating conflict? And is definitely being present with one another, not necessarily wanting to find solutions, and is also to be able to feel that I am in conflict with someone. Can I voice myself without that I'm going to hurt the other, right? In fact, is that just a theme for men? Just a theme for women? I think in the end of the day, most people who are in relationships and they the new during conflict, is that they want to be heard, they want their values to be seen, they
Mm.
want their experience not to be gaslighted, which means the opposite of gaslighting, invalidating. And then, only then, they can create a solution together. So,
Mm.
because my conclusion does not come from one client, or it comes from an evolution of the conversations I have with my clients, which is, yes, I now have been heard. Okay, so now discuss, because otherwise one is pulling in one direction that may not be the necessary, and then people are sharing lives as perhaps partners, but not as really in connection. It's
Mm.
quite sad. So
Mm.
that's the other thing. And then continuing to go on, what women want, wish men to know in terms of intimacy. Why are we bringing this up? What is that women find that men don't know about what's necessary in intimacy? And maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Mm.
What is that? Why there is a possibility that don't know something that women wish they knew about intimacy, and what will that be?
What would that be? Well, I think it's well, to start with, I think about where is it that we learn about intimacy, and what women want. And I think about conversations that I had when I was a school kid, and oh yeah, they like, the girls like this. I'm like, who 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 put like you in charge, like this rando in a school playground sort of thing? Like the learning about this is not necessarily through conversation and connection. It's often by whispers. It's often by, these days, that's I've just sort of shown my age a little bit, because there was no social media back then. But we go to social media and we go, where is it we learn about it, sort of intimacy, and what women want in intimacy? Well, it depends who we listen to, you
Yeah.
know and actually, if you click on the wrong place in the at a formative time, you then think that what women want is a, a strong alpha type male that you're not. And so what you're going to do, you're going to start bending yourself out of shape, and to create this style of human that doesn't even really warrant the creation of, in the spectrum of need for connection. Like this is the trouble. This is the trouble with narrative online, and polarizing, um, polarizing informational sources, is that in these moments where we try to understand what we want, is we go to the wrong sources, and so we end up with the tricky mess that we so often see. And in relationship to intimacy, I would say that this becomes almost what's the word? It puts the importance of all of this under a microscope, because I would say that, when it comes to intimacy, um, sort of one of the most fundamental states, that we see, and this is not, again, not just what we've been told, but this is what the research data tells us, is that safety and emotional safety is a fundamental underpinning, for any kind of intimacy to grow. It's almost like the bedrock for this, emotional safety, and I can trust that this person is not going to be threatening to me, and not necessarily that's not necessarily the thing that people think about first and foremost.
It's they don't, they think about, okay, so what women knew, wish we know, we can't figure out. One day they want something, the next one, I don't know, she wanted to be intimate, but now she doesn't want. So
Well, it can boil down to a list of behaviors. They want to stand tall with your shoulders back. They want, to pay for the dinner. What they want is because you know, if I do that, they want me to look in a particular way, and you know, have certain sort of muscle mass, and you know, be a certain, you know, height. So I'm going to stick things in my shoes to sort of hit that magic 6 foot mark. You know, it's all of these observable behavioral things that are, yeah, if I tick all those boxes, then I might get laid. You know, that to be a little crude, but fundamentally that's the narrative a little bit. And you know, by doing all of those things is a really poor substitute for creating a context of emotional safety.
Yet it's much easier. I mean, it's the same with any of my, you know, I work as a therapist, I work as a coach, and I'm sure that many of the women that come to me, particularly in the beginning, they think they are going to be given a list of things that they're now going to do in order to become authentic. And after a while, they're like, oh, I cannot, after all, it's not a list of things. It's not behaviors that I can develop. It's
Mm,
everything else. And
mm,
you already mentioning that there is something that I also find, as you are saying about men doing the whole right thing. I mean, how many have we spoke to who are really doing all the right things, if those were the right things, right? There's a trend, and so there's a trend where women don't pay for the first date, and then men go in halves, and we don't know. Like you say, it depends on which account you follow on social media, which books, and maybe which actually the conversations we have with our friends sometimes have so much impact because, oh, but I am different, I feel differently, but how free do I feel to do things differently when it comes to relationships? And the thing is, most people are very frustrated because it doesn't work. And then
mm,
they fall. But I follow all the tips. You have been telling me this is what you want. And I think that it goes back to the first point I made when we were speaking about conflict and about what women want. Yeah, many of the women I come across also don't know what about intimacy themselves. I mean, how many times? I mean, it's interesting. I love working with women during the transition, beautiful transition into menopause, so into their non-fertile years, and it's an amazing transition.
mm,
I understand it is a transition into more, even more authenticity, if it's possible. If one develops authenticity during the menstruating years, where our creativity is explored in many ways, and if we're lucky, we get to see the bliss that is to be a creative being in the world again in many ways. And then, oh, the body starts changing and it doesn't have the same messages. And yet, wow, women sometimes are so amazing leaders in their careers, and they've achieved so much, and they've had a family, and now they have, you know, the kids are going away from home, and they know nothing about their bodies in terms of pleasure, in terms of what makes me feel good. And again, they go into programs, if they are lucky and they're informed and privileged enough to be able to pay, to learn what to do with their body, and if I move away, and this technique. And now in the last years, I've seen this being taken by younger and younger and younger women
mm,
about techniques. And again, I'm not at all against techniques. I think it's like learning an instrument. Sometimes we need some things to learn, like dance. We need to know steps, maybe, but we still will be able to move our bodies and dance to the sound of the music if
mm.
we actually liberate ourselves. So it really depends. Are we creating a shape or not? Like
Yeah.
you said.
I really like that as a thought train, because it's the idea of you know, the idea of ticking. If we tick all the right boxes, if we make all the right shapes, if we do all the right things, we learn all the right dance moves. It doesn't necessarily automatically mean that you'll get deepening intimacy, because that's just stuff you do, rather than presenting who you are. And there's a fundamental difference with that. And what I noted down is is this, that there's always benefits from standing up tall with your shoulders back, from neurophysiological, as well as sort of from an attractiveness perspective. People like people with, looking at people with postures, where we go and hold ballet dancers up in high regard with that respect. We have our spectrum of preferences. Some people like a tall person, or a burly person, or a petite person. We've got our spectrum of preferences of attraction. But that, just because there's attraction, doesn't mean that there's necessarily the automatic deepening intimacy. In the same way as just because you don't learn the dance moves doesn't mean that you're going to love the dance. If it doesn't speak to your soul, if it doesn't speak to your fundamental essence as a human. I think that really is a major crux in mismatch, because it's this notion of, what I'm doing all the right things, I'm making all the right shapes, I'm doing all the dance moves. Yet, actually, the truth is that's not what people are looking for. We want connection, and so you go to connection being grown, um, vulnerability, and sharing vulnerability. It's grown out of authentic presence. It's grown out of, a bedrock of, um, uh, psychological safety. It's nurtured into being, not danced into being, or dressed sharply into being. Um, it's just a different thing. And I suppose in the same way, as if we've got this notion that, oh, I thought it was this, but actually it's this. For intimacy, it's very similar. In conflict, I thought conflict was this, but it's actually this opportunity to take a step towards intimacy.
Mm.
It doesn't need to be this notion of disconnection. This opportunity to I'm sort of threading them together a little bit. This opportunity to get to really demonstrate that even in this moment, it is safe to be you.
Yeah,
Even though there is a difficulty in the dynamic that we have in this moment, it's safe, and that too's welcome.
yeah,
And we can do this. Yeah, we can do this together. Tell
yeah,
me your stuff, right?
yeah. I mean, it's so great. Dots, and we will be connecting the dots now, even more. So there is something in common with what helps navigating conflict, what helps increasing intimacy
Mm,
one another. The trick about this life, and that we want to bring into awareness, is it's not what women want men to know, because it's not by knowing, it's by being. And you've already mentioned the big key, that is action, it's presence, it's listening, it's safety. And I just realized, I've just reevaluate a situation that happened to me many years ago. And you know this story, but now I'm going to tell it with a different interpretation. Uh, this was a time I was once a week, maybe maximum, maybe a month, but I was practicing and attending tango, Argentinian tango. I love dancing. I have so much experience in couple dancing, and I've used the analogies of the relationship between dancing in my coaching, and I've also taken private lessons. And my tango teacher was my coach, because there's so much that we go through as we learn this to dance, beyond learning steps. And tango is really something much more beyond steps. And again, it's by people think it's very essential, but in fact, it's a very intimate kind of dance. And we were talking about this the other day, and I was saying, you know, it is the most intimate dance, not because of what we do. We may not even be touching each other, holding each other, but there has to be so much communication. And one so present. The woman has to be so present to what the man is inviting, and or the leader, and the leader has to be so open and listening to the follower, that it creates this meditation where two people are communicating without words but being intimate in that moment, and then they have a shared experience. And that's the other thing that also conflicts, transformation, going through navigating conflict together, also adds to to the success, or to the relationship, because we now have a shared experience. Anything that carry on. And there was this time, and I didn't go frequently enough for people to know me. So every night that I had to, you know, see if people noticed me, and invited me to dance, because tango, there's a bit of formality. And I remember noticing an older man then, and he was not dancing much, but sometimes I could spot. I have so much experience. I could spot. He must be a good dancer. So I was waiting, and then I saw, and we ended dancing together. And it was still one of my best moments in the milonga, at the milonga. And it was because we did very little with the steps. You know, the feet, we mostly walk. And we did that thing about communicating through the movement of both bodies. But I think that what I checked, and why I really want to dance with him, is because I felt very safe. I felt very safe. In tango and in many partner dance environments, it's a bit risky. There's so much judgment, and then if I don't want to go beyond dance, I have this idea that I have to communicate it all the time, and there's so much seconds, which is great, but something that is present. People want something beyond dancing, is often the case, and we can have a life just dancing because of that. And I love the aspect of that opportunity that humans have of dancing and being physical, intimate as well beyond the dance. For me, I remember that night I wanted just to dance, and he really felt really safe, because I knew that I felt, I don't but I felt that. And so I was able to be sharing a moment of intimacy with him because I felt safe. And that's exactly what I think that we want to highlight this. Both believe that physiologically, psychologically, and even just intellectually, intimacy is not something that shows up like that. So our behaviors that people can have very immediate, but real intimacy. And it doesn't come because we prepare a dinner and we pay, or we whatever. It comes because we're safe with each other.
Yeah.
And that is equal for both men and women. As we both discuss very often, men tend to feel safe more often, more quickly, for biological reasons. But for women, it's very, very important to feel safe in order to develop intimacy.
Yeah.
If it's an argument, or if the person is not being truth, or is going to put shapes, then actually operates the other way. Yeah. I'm curious if you had anything to add at this.
Yeah, no, I really like the dancing analogy. I think it's really key. And I think as well, oftentimes if you were to look from the outside at at dancers who are truly intimate, not necessarily just technically making shapes, then the nature of that dance it looks so delightful. It's a different. You're watching a proper thing. It's, you know, you may have dancers who are technically very much better, but when you're witnessing real intimacy, in the dance, you see it. It's palpable in your sensory spectrum, and that's exactly the same, with intimacy in relation.
Mm.
It's, you know, what we can do is tick all the boxes, and we look the part and do the thing. But if the intimacy is not there, then there's a palpable difference in how you experience that engagement, and that the experience where there's is really the sensation of not being quite connected. You know, it's that's the thing, is we come back to connection security all the time. And it's the most fundamental piece, when we talk about conflict.
Mm.
Vulnerable to be in conflict, whether you're bringing a charge or experiencing one. You know, it's a vulnerable state. So we look to create security by maybe slowing down, or maybe, deciding when we're ready to have these sort of discussions. We look to create connection and security for the potential of, presenting myself, all of myself, which is again a risky business sometimes, because actually there's bits of me that I'm not so super proud of. There's bits of me that I wish I could sort of tuck out the way, hope that they don't get discovered, right? And everyone has those bits. It's a vulnerable state to feel like, there's a deepening connection, which is why it's almost easier to, to okay, stay disconnected, just, you know orientate towards, money, sex, and power. Boom. Well, you don't need to sit with yourself very much, and in the dark of the night, if that's what you're focusing on, that's what you're distracting your mind with. I don't think it plays into anywhere close to, the sort of the spectrum of human experience I want. You orientate towards deepening into intimacy. You're orientating towards love. You orientate towards money, sex, and power. That's something else, which I could talk about, but
And this kind of attitude also departs from a question of principles and values. It's like there will be people with different values where for them intimacy and creating safety is after, the priority is after, and for their understanding of themselves, after having power, after having money, after having,
yeah,
that is all possible.
yeah,
And we are speaking to those who know deeply that their biggest longing includes establishing relationships
yeah.
that are nurturing, that are connecting, that are in fact healing.
Mm,
Again, this is our absolute truth that we bring here, are, yes, based on science and based on the clinical data, and then based on empirical collection
yeah,
of our cases with our client. Actually, it's within this context where people are feeling that their life can be better
yeah,
by being develop the skills, developing a way of being, and developing contexts where they can establish these relationships. And in terms of conclusion, I think what we are saying here is yes, so both, for conflict, for navigating conflict, what we know is that we need presence rather than solutions. We need both to feel heard and value. We need uh, the sort of, I had put it here that we need just a sort of a quality that is created by both, by
Yeah.
both. And so when you're speaking about vulnerability, again, I get like really protective to those people who can be vulnerable and they are in interactions with others who cannot be vulnerable. And this is that needs to be happening together. Maybe some people are going to be more comfortable with certain practices than others, but this cannot happen just one side of the coin, not just one partner in the relationship, not just one member of a team. The
Mm.
going to be navigated by both, and both have to be engaged in it with presence and capacity to listen. And then arising in intimacy, again, our brain, our all the glands and everything that operates for us to be in pleasure, our heart, what we call our heart, our availability to the other, our openness, and our capacity to see the other because we are being seen, is developed by developing safety. So whether, and I want to leave this, whether the people watching us and following us are coming to our courses, we can give you a tip, is that it's try to aim at creating safety. Create safety for yourself and others. And it's funny because this week I just heard so many on LinkedIn. I was with my work with organizations and people were talking about safety and creating safety. And I'm so glad that we are starting to vocalize, to voice some of this. But we really recommend you to aim, if you don't know anything else, just aim at developing safety for yourself and for those you are in a relationship. What makes them safe? What
Yeah.
is in that moment so they don't feel threatened, that they're not going to be judged or blamed, or what is that? And that's tricky, but it's gorgeous and it's easy.
Imagine a world if you could, this notion that the most, if the most powerful currency, social currency that you could attain was relating to how safe you made people feel.
Something on that recently as
uh,
a everywhere, but it's so good. Absolutely, yeah,
yeah,
you're
it's
right.
a great notion, isn't it?
Yeah, like your credit in the bank. How many people have you made feel safe this
Yeah, yeah,
contributed to feel safe this week?
yeah. Like you, that's what you go to the made someone feel safe on the trains today. Oh yeah.
Amazing experience. That was amazing. Yes, absolutely. But safe, and then there's another thing is that is how do we create spaces for people to feel safe, and
Yeah,
how possibility to create spaces where we feel safe, and that's what we really also we cover, not what we also cover that in our
yeah,
course.
yeah.
Course, it's just amazing. It covers it all. And yeah, so I think we need to go because Instagram
I,
is going to throw us
yeah,
out.
I think so. I think you've concluded really nicely there. I think that's uh, we.
And next week, and next week we're going to talk about why most relationships fail and not what you think. We
Oh,
are,
this is a
and
that's a great one. We've got low. That's a lot to talk about there.
I,
It steps on from what we've opened today.
it's a whole course. It's so rich. The subject of next week is so rich that Mark and I have created a course to address that. But and it's not this one, so it's another one. Anyway, we are here. We welcome. Thank you so much for being here, Mark. It's a pleasure. I have so much pleasure speaking about this with you.
Lovely to speak to.
Connect, stay connected, people. Tell us what you thought about what we say, if anything resonated, and I hope so a lot. And how can we help you? Stay tuned, stay connected. See you next week. Bye bye.
Bye bye.